Hey everyone, this is Eli and Jafari. We're starting out this new project, just making a podcast to have conversations and share our views on the whole one wheel community and whole one wheel space and everything like that. And I'm really excited to get this started, so I'm gonna hand this over to Jafari. What are we gonna be talking about today?
I think we should just keep it pretty brief and have some pretty cool just thoughts that I want to get out there and just we can kind of talk about like kind of what we started off with and well, I kind of want to ask you like did you ever ride stock for like a point of time like when you first got your one wheel? Did you like no accessories like like just completely stock, just like naked? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I definitely started out just on a straight stock board because I wasn't introduced through like the wider community. I just knew like a couple guys that had, bought their boards and they didn't ride anything other than, just future motion stuff. So I rode a stock board for quite a long time until I had until I messed up my board trying to like clean all the dirt out of it. I disconnected a cable and couldn't connect it back together, so I ended up taking it to your guys' shop, and that's where I got
Oh
basically
shoot.
introduced, yeah, into the whole wider community. And yeah,
So
since then I've been putting a
basically,
ton of stuff on my board.
and that's like what was like the first accessories that you got?
I mean, first real accessories I got were like some sidekicks, but that doesn't really count. But like, the
Well,
first major.
I mean like first thing that made your board like actually like comfortable, like rideable, like you felt the difference when you bought it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's definitely probably most people's, first big accessory, was the flight fins. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
flight
just
fins.
such a difference, especially riding a pint, because, you just have like a lot less room for your feet on that board, just a lot less security for,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
for your shoes or whatever, because I ride Vans. That's my main shoes that I ride on, and those are like pretty flat, pretty wide, and so it's a real help having like extra security on your board.
Yeah. Yeah, the flight fins are sweet. I use flight fins on my racing boards, and I know like in the RL like you have to take them off for race for the rail, so like I try to keep them on as long as I can because like I love the flight fins, I love catching air. I don't know, I don't you catch a lot of air, yeah, with your
Yeah,
pint. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, definitely because the pint's lighter and everything, like the flight fins on the pint definitely unlocks it, you know,
yeah,
like a
yeah,
whole another trick side. You could do 360s and 180s just like so much easier with it. And
yeah,
even like drops and curb nudges. Yeah, it's just super sweet.
yeah. And the other thing that flight fins help out with that is what really accentuated by getting a nice tire. Like first thing or after flight fins, I got a really nice, like a big treaded tire. I think it was like the Hoosier treaded tire, whatever. Um,
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And
Hoosier,
having
yeah.
those plus flight fins like really gives you a lot more security on trails, especially on a pint because they're just so much, so a lot less clearance, just a lot smaller. It
Yeah,
really
yeah, for
helps
sure.
out with your stability and just ability to ride off road.
Like, do you like the getting into the trail tires? Like, I feel like people, I've gotten feedback from them and they don't people don't really feel a difference like compared to the slick. Like I feel like the only way you're gonna feel a difference with the treaded tire is if you're actually riding on conditions that would be hard for a slick tire to ride on, like you know what I'm saying? Like puddles and stuff. Like how was it riding with the slick compared to riding with the treaded?
I mean, the thing is for me, like I got a full on treaded tire. So if you get
Yeah.
like an enduro or something like that, that's like a mixture. That's like halfway basically. And so I
Hmm.
think that just getting on like a full on treaded tire makes a lot more of a difference than like an enduro will. And I
Yeah.
mean, even riding on grass, you just have so much more grab, so much more
Yeah, you
traction.
feel it on the grass.
Yeah, I
And
think
then like
it,
Have you rode on like puddles or like super like silty, like slippery type thing on a slick tire? It's like, oh my God,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, it does make a difference. Like a full treaded tire is a lot harder to do some tricks on and doesn't really have the same kind of like it kind of grabs more onto the pavement, which you don't really want, you know? Like it has less surface
Yeah,
area,
true.
but the parts are
Yeah.
like if I'm trying to do a 180, it's easier on a slick tire than a treaded because it just doesn't have that same kind of grab that the treaded does.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Yeah. So I think like
I
most people
Yeah,
an enduro or something like that is gonna be really great, you know?
yeah, definitely for like tricks, definitely a slick tire or like I think the float life or I think it's the float life. They make like a Hoosier slick, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I think they use that for tricks in a lot of their videos. And yeah, I think the slick tire is ideal for tricks actually, because yeah, like you're saying, that grip and like especially if you're doing like those tricks where you're spinning on your wind, where the wheels actually free spinning.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's so hard when you have tread on your tire compared to when it's slick. It just free spins so much easier.
Yeah. But like for me, someone who I mean, I don't have enough money to have two different boards. Like one is like treaded off-road and one's for tricks, you know? So
Yeah,
I have, you know, getting an enduro, like I still ride enduro on my pint and that does off-road just fine, you know. Just having a
nice.
little
Yeah,
bit more traction than a slick tire really helps out. And also some I think that third-party tires have um or just at least some of them are better material than a lot of the stock tires, especially for pints. Like
yeah,
if we're talking about GTs, their new performance tire is pretty sick. Like it's
yeah,
um
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
super thick too. Like I
I've been
ride
I've
like
been riding that.
go ahead.
I've been riding that performance tire, and it's like it's treaded enough to where it doesn't catch too much. You know what I'm saying? So you can get free when you want to, and like it grips. It's just like that perfect. It's like just there. You know, the tread's just there.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And the thing about the performance tires that I really like is that it's a really thick material. Like it's a really
Yeah,
I don't know, not thick, but like it's a harder material than any of the other any of the other tires I've rode on. Like my pint, I keep it at like maybe 14 PSI as far like, you know, as
yeah,
far as how much I inflate the tire. But the
yeah,
GT performance tire is so thick that I keep it at like maybe 9 or 10. Like it's such a stiff tire that you can keep it at a pretty low PSI and still be like totally fine. You know, like you don't have any problems that it's too low or that you're not going to get enough or that you're going to be getting too much friction or anything like that.
yeah, yeah. Not too much grab.
Yeah.
And like what PSI do you ride on your GT? Like when you're like, I know you've only done like one race, but like on the trails, like trying to go your fastest, you know?
Trying to go fastest on trails probably like around a 9.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, me too. I'm probably like 9, 10-ish, like in between there.
Yeah. And I live like small town enough that I don't really inflate it anymore for extra range. If I'm going on like the highway or anything, I can get
Yeah,
anywhere I'm trying to go with about like 9 PSI. It's still the range is fine, you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a Cushnug or a Cush High on your pint?
Yeah, I have a my back foot pad is a Nug. I don't really like the high too much because it
Yeah,
lifts up
you
your
like the
foot.
Nug more than the High?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because
Yeah.
having a little bit of honestly, it's not even about the concave for me. It's about
Yeah.
just the angling up. Like for my GT, I way much prefer the flat kick foot pads than the concave ones. Because it's
Oh, I
like,
see. Yeah.
yeah, because I ride on Vans, of course, you know, those are my preferred riding shoes. and those are some
Mhm.
super flat shoes, skateboard shoes. So the
Yeah,
concave just doesn't.
the concave foot pad, especially for the GT, it's like super violent. It's like plasticky, you know. It doesn't fit your foot well,
Yeah,
especially if you have small feet.
yeah, and if you have flight fins on and you have like a cush nug, or yeah, cush nug, like a low or high, um just it's more for me about the angling upward, because if you have like
Hmm.
flight fins, you have like if you move your feet to your inside of your board, you have the flight fin securing it. On the outside, your feet are kind of angling in, which just gives you more security and everything like that, just like more grip on the board.
Yeah,
And yeah, I feel like that is more important than concave or not.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And just as far as angling goes, I feel like um the best way to start out with like angling your boards is with foot pads, because that's like, I mean, it's still pretty expensive for pieces of plastic, but it's much cheaper um than rails, any kind of third
Yeah,
party rails.
yeah, for sure. And then if you go to like any pro race anywhere and you look at the racers boards, they always have some type of concave foot pad on their back foot pad.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like mandatory. And if you don't have it, it's just that much harder to turn, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it just gives you more stability, I think, right? Yeah, stability.
Yeah,
And
stability and just makes it more comfortable to ride.
yeah, and I honestly I want to try to find a way to get some kind of third party foot pad on the front of my pint, because
Yeah.
GT, the Future Motions flat kicks, I think they're pretty good. I don't need to really upgrade from those. But for my pint,
Hmm.
just the flat front foot pad, like I want to find a way to transplant the sensor off of it onto a like a cush, probably a cush nug. Yeah, or yeah,
Yeah.
cush low, right? I don't know what the
Yeah.
naming things for those are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
That'd be
having like
pretty
an
cool.
extra stability in the front as well.
Like I'm thinking, have you ever looked at the Ignite? Because I think they have some type of front foot pad accessory that might be concave. It might not be concave, but I think it goes on top of your grip tape and it's actually like a concave uh like topping.
Oh, okay. It's like it's like a formed grip tape.
Yeah, and that's on Ignite, I think.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
you could go
that'd be
check it
sick.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there's go ahead.
I think the Ignite they're sold on One Wheel Parts actually. So if you want to go check that out, they're on One Wheel Parts
Yeah.
to get that front foot pad.
Yeah. Onewheel parts, they have some crazy stuff. Like if you
Yeah,
want to
for
like
sure.
find I mean most expensive but also like coolest stuff. Coolest third party stuff for your board. Yeah, it's Onewheel parts.
Yeah.
And
They have they do the fenders that you can insert your own graphic. And I saw these guys at one, I think it was at Dirt Surfers, and they had like these anime printed flight fin fenders and it looked pretty sick.
yeah, that's
It was
pretty
pretty
cool.
dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, for starting out on a board, all you need is really some, like if you really want to have a really good riding experience, all you need is some flight fins. And if you want to go off-road, like, at least a slightly treaded tire. Other than that, like if you're just like casual rider, or not even a casual rider, if you're like not a serious like
Yeah,
racing rider,
like a cru
whatever.
like say you're just like a cruiser, like the first step to just making your cruising board even more comfortable is just getting like that concave foot pad just to make it easier to turn and just to make that carvability like more easier, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
And
totally.
like if you're a trail rider and you're getting popped off your board a lot and you would want to just be locked in more, definitely the flight fits for sure. Like, yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. And like, I mean, once you get into like some more serious riding, of course, especially like off-road, I think third party rails aren't necessary, but they're definitely like, you know, leveling up your board from like a
Yeah,
pretty
for sure.
sick like cruising board to like an actual like shredding board,
Well, I
because
say like if you're riding like violent downhill terrain and you're tail dragging and you're coming off of your board because of tail dragging, you could get a rail set that has a lifted back. The tail end of your board would be actually like lifted, so you wouldn't be tail dragging, and it would just make that type of trail just so much easier. And if you're doing a Strava competition and you're the only person with those type of rails and everybody else has the stock rail set, you're at an advantage. And uh, I'd say if you're riding flat and the trails like aren't very violent and you wouldn't be tail dragging a lot, the rails wouldn't do that much difference. But if the trails have a lot of downhill, I definitely suggest rails.
yeah. And also, I mean, if you have the money, if you have the money, you might want to get some because um especially if you're on a pint or a pint X, because they have a pretty low center of gravity because they're smaller boards. If you get like WTF rails or mustache rails to a lesser extent, and you have your
Mhm.
feet in like a flight fins position, you will have like such a low center of gravity that it's super chill just super flowy, if you're carving or
Yeah.
anything like that. Like on my GT,
And
the
then
hardest thing to assimilate to the GT is just having that higher center of gravity because like so used to a low center of gravity with the pint that it turning on my GT can be a little rough. Like I have to take down some of the
yeah,
turn
for sure.
compensation in my custom settings for
You
it.
definitely have to like dig into it. The pint's just like so nimble and like so easy to turn. It's definitely like I'd say the pint is like the ultimate cruising vehicle, and the XR and the GT and the GTS are all like, well, I mean the XR is kind of like that middle point. You can cruise and do tricks and you can do everything. I feel like the GT and the GTS are kind of harder to do tricks on. They're kind of just like mainly, send it boards, just like trail boards, like purely
Yeah.
just for trail riding and for super long rides, basically.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that a pint is a pretty good place to start out with, and like especially not if you're like a taller, bigger person, then they're not the best for it because they're not going to fit your feet, and you're going to have a very high center of gravity if you're a tall, larger person.
Yeah,
And
true.
so you probably want to start on an XR. But if you're going to choose
Yeah.
between like XR and Pint X, I'd honestly at this point go with a Pint X because it's basically same stats, and you're
I
just going to
mean, and
have
then
more longevity with
if
a Pint
you're,
X.
yeah, true, true. But and then if you're a tall person, like you're saying, like I'd say GT, honestly, because the Pint X's, they're if you're like tall and top heavy, it's kind of hard to stay on the board. Like I've noticed, I've had a lot of tall friends get the pints and the pint X's, and it's just hard for them to like, you know, stay on it without the board. They either catch a wobble and they can't stay on it, or they are riding and they just can't keep themselves on it because it's just so nimble and so light that
Yeah.
like I feel like if that tall person were to be on a GT, it would just be so much easier for them to ride it because it's so like bulky and so heavy and stable. It's like they can just stand on it and like the GT is carrying them almost, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. So I think if we're gonna go with like a metric of where you should start out with, if you're like, maybe a high schooler or a little kid, not that tall or whatever, definitely can easily start out on a pint. And if you have the money, a pint X, because just the extra range is so nice. And there does
Yeah.
definitely feel like more power behind a pint X versus a
No, for
pint.
sure. Yeah. The
Yeah.
torque. Yeah.
But if you're taller,
Yeah.
like either an XR or a GT, because just a pint or pint X won't really do it for you.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's just, and of course, I think XR will do fine for most people.
Like
And
like yeah, and like what would you say like if you took your pint X on like a trail, like how do you think that would like how because I know you've done that for a long time before you got your GT. Like you've been riding the pint. I don't know how long did you ride the pint for?
At least 2.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, Pint
So
X. So it's
yeah, pint X, pint X.
more probably a little bit more torque than a pint, but
So you took it on lots of trails and stuff. So like how do you say it handles the rough trails?
honestly, the only problem that I have riding a Pint X versus a GT on a trail is clearance. I feel like a Pint does just fine hitting bonks, and I have an enduro, so it just fine going over rough terrain. I have WTF rails, so it kind of helps with the clearance a little bit and the stability as well. But
Yeah.
honestly, the stability on a Pint X on like trail riding is probably a little bit better than a GT if you have like a concave foot pad, just because of the lower center of gravity.
Yeah.
So, like, if you get a Pint
Well,
X, it's not going
and
to
then
stop
I
you
mean
from
like
riding trails.
yeah, okay. I see. So like I'm saying like torque wise too, like if you were to if you were to go on a uphill compared to riding it on your GT or going a up a rough, a going down a rough side of the trail, like how do you think your pint would handle compared to your GT?
I mean, of course, a GT is going to do better, and yeah, I mean, my Pint X does pretty well going over rocks and stuff like that. Of course, not too fast, but
Yeah,
it does fine going up hills and whatever. But it definitely struggles if you're going up extra steep and rocky and anything like that. And also, I am like a bigger person, and people who weigh more. One thing you got to take into consideration how much you weigh
yeah,
because a smaller board with less torque can like someone who's like 100 pounds can be super zippy on one of those, but if you're like 180 or 200, that board can struggle taking you up hills and stuff like that.
yeah, for
So
sure.
it is definitely like if you're a larger person, a pint or a pint X can be kind of limiting, and even an XR can be kind of limiting as far as like what kind of inclines and terrain you can really go up. But other than that, I think it's like not too much of a limitation to have a Pint X. Like
Yeah,
I've been able to do a ton of stuff on my Pint X.
yeah, for sure. Because there are Clydesdales uh who race and they all ride GTs or GTS or some type of modded board for them, to race on because they wouldn't be racing on a Pint X or a XR because they're just too heavy for it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
So yeah, definitely if you're like over that like 150, yeah, that's probably good. Yeah, 150-ish. Like if you're in that range, I'd say get a GT if you can afford it, or an XR. But anything below that, it's probably not going to be the funnest one wheel for you to ride.
yeah, yeah, definitely. All right. We're coming up on 30 minutes right now, so I think we're gonna, wind it down and just do some final statements right now. But yeah, I definitely
All
think
right.
that um just start out where you can, You don't even have to really get any third party stuff. Just start out on the board that you feel like will be the best for you and
Yeah.
just like start
Yeah, for
out,
sure.
get into it because it's a ton of fun, you know. It's probably the
Yeah.
funnest thing in my life, honestly. I go everywhere on a board. It's such a big deal, such a useful item to have.
Yeah, definitely. And then if you guys want to get any of these accessories and if you don't have a store that sells them, a one wheel shop or anything like that, you can just look on the Float Life. I think thefloatlife.com, and you can look at one wheel parts and craft and ride if you want to get some accessories and amp your board up. And hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Stay tuned for another.